It seems in one area of this a panorama shot at Rocknest from Curiosity, I seem to find an area which just shows a little bit more evidence of life form than any other area. So I'll just show you what I mean. We've got this. Okay, I'll try to show you where I'm zooming in on, and you'll see why it's strange. So basically, okay, this is going to be a hard one. See that area down the bottom there, that rock, and you'll see that last clear mountain on the right. Pick that sort of rock there in the center, and that rock formation. Zoom in. Now this is where I found 2 or 3 or 4 things. Now this thing here, it could be a rock. I mean, I've seen very weird rocks, and I've actually enlarged this picture analyzer. You'll see all these processes coming out of it. It's like a big arachnoid or some sort of growth like a cactus growth. Now you'll probably think that sounds bizarre. You know, we haven't seen anything growing on Mars or anything that looks like a cactus or anything, but wait till I sort of zoom in the things that I found. So I'll actually enlarge that picture. Now this is the same area where I found that very bizarre thing. It looks like a cactus. So I'll just zoom in now. I'll just pause it for a sec. So this is the same area. I'll have to enlarge it again. Where I found the first sign of something looks like life, and that was this thing. First I saw a crawl mark, and I thought, okay, it's probably where water condensates and there's rain and stuff. But hold on, it seems to be going uphill, and there's a 45-degree turn, and there's an object there that seems to produce that crawl mark around those rocks, and it just looks very camouflaged. It's like a object, and there it is, and it looks very camouflaged, but it seems to be the exact width of the object that leaves those crawl marks. Something that looks like it's curled, like a rattlesnake, seems to enter that crawl mark. There it is there, and I'll enlarge those pictures. And in between those rocks there seem to be 2 entrances that seem to be holes or living spaces, and that joins with that crawl mark there, and that thing seems to come out, because obviously it wouldn't be there before that crawled through or produced that mark, and it's very beady. Now I found one more creature or object that looks like that, so I'll actually zoom into there now, and I'll also enlarge that picture. Now this is obviously why this area is so bizarre. This is where I keep finding these things that look like life forms, and here's one there as well. Now this is easy to get into. You find that picture, that beautiful rock, and there, and you think, well, okay, it's only a rock, but then as you casually go to the left, whammo, look at that. It just looks like a beautiful cactus growing in that beautifully carved out rock, and it just, here's the branches coming to the right. One goes that way, one goes up. Now again, it could be a crystalline formation, like a crystalline growth, and that can happen on Earth, but it just seems to be in a spot where it collects sunlight, moisture, and it just looks like life. And then I'll take it to the other one. Here's the other one there that seems to be coiled around, same as that thing that was coiled around near that drag mark. I'll also take a close-up of that. It just seems to be the same type of form. It's coiled, and then this thing pops up like a head there. So I'll actually enlarge that picture. And there's things that I've seen sticking out of holes as well. Now everything is very, very camouflaged. If it is a life form, it's very camouflaged. You'll see that blue thing there that has all the very bumpy forms to it. And I'll also take a picture of that as well. And could these be just so camouflaged types of life forms that by just quickly looking you wouldn't realize they're there unless you really go in a a depth very closely, and they can't be rocks. I've seen really great shaped rocks, but when I've focused in on these things, and the first form of a life that I found were those drag marks, and it's just too peculiar that the drag marks for the first time would lead to an object there that looks very camouflaged. It's the same width, and then it does a 45-degree turn, and that thing just happens to go into that drag mark there, and that's also the picture I'll be enlarging. And I've done a previous episode on that that leaves the drag marks, but I'm sort of now trying to put everything together, and it shows like things seem to be alive and are growing and very well camouflaged. There seems to be life forms there, which didn't make sense at the start, but then after I see more and more of these sort of things in one spot together, I'm starting to think again. And then just traveling a little bit up, close to that blue-like cactus that seems to be growing there. So I'll just again show you where we are. There's the crawl mark of that object. Obviously it looks like it's been left by that object. There's that round thing that looks like a rattlesnake curled up and just climbing into that drag mark. Then we just go up very gently, and just before we see that blue cactus type of thing, I think I've just lost it. I'll pause it and go back. So just as we saw that drag mark, we're then heading up to that blue type of cactus growth there. So again we see all these sort of life forms, or things that look like life forms, in a specific area. And then guess what, just here you'll see a hole, and three things are sticking out. They've got like little bulbs at the end. They're cylinders, and they just seem to be sticking out of that hole. If anyone can have a look themselves, try to correct me. You go a bit further up, and there's things that look like rocks, but they're not. They're just too many filaments, and it looks like a fungus or some sort of growth there. They don't look like rocks, but then I've seen very bizarre rocks, and then you'll come straight away to this beautiful thing there that just seems to grow there, and it's got branches on it. It's bizarre, but yeah, that's the peculiar thing. That thing, I'll enlarge that picture as well. It's a hole right there, and these three things are coming out with bulbs at the end of them. This looks very curly as well here, but it could be a rock. I've seen bizarre rocks. So if that's the closest we've got to a life form there in what looks like a desert environment, that's as much as we can get. You'll see things like that just you think, well, can they be a rock with all these twists and curves to them, or are they just some sort of a growth that's attached to the rocks? It's very hard to say. But this looks very unusual there. And as I said, the whole environment here looks very unusual. So obviously the trick to finding things is obviously if they leave a trail mark, and that one did there. And that was great, because that was the first time I thought, look, it's worth hunting. There could be other things there. And look at that. That thing just crawls over into that drag mark. What could be so superbly camouflaged as to look like a rock? And yet it is producing that drag mark because it's right behind it. It's the same sort of width. And that thing happens to crawl over into that drag mark there. Okay, I'll analyze the pictures now, but it seems this area is a wealth of the closest of what we come to life on Mars. I've just imported the pictures and let's have a closer look at them. This was one bizarre one as well. It just looked like a rock that... Anyway, we've seen too many rocks that are so strange we don't want to comment. But this is the one that looks like some sort of arachnoid or something. So if you just... It's got too many processes coming out of it to be a rock. And it's in this area where I found the trail marks and everything else. It just maybe warrants a closer look. So that's why I sort of zoomed in on that one. It's very hard to get it. It's as close as I can get. It's not clear enough. Here's close-up view of it. So I'll try this way: noise reduction, color, and exposure. We might get some view of it there. I might do the noise reduction some more, adjust the exposure some more. It just shows too many rod-like processes coming out of that to be just a normal rock. So that's why I thought it could be similar to these weird cactuses that we've seen, or it's very hard to make that one out. You have to virtually... It's actually clear if I just enlarge it a fraction. Here's that bizarre thing. It looked like a hole in the ground with three things coming out, filaments with heads on them. Let's play adjust detail, analyze, adjust exposure. Tricky. I can't do much with it. It just shows 1, 2, 3 coming out of that hole. Again, that's not clear enough. Here's that object that was curled up. It looks like it's curled up again, similar to that other object near the trail mark. You've got what looks like two filaments sticking up there. So we'll try this one first. There it is. That's brought it up well. I'm happy with that. See how it just can't be a rock. There's too many of these. It twirls around and all of a sudden these two processes come up, and that looked similar to that round thing that uncoiled near the drag mark. Maybe if I adjust the exposure, see if it works this way. Highlights and brightness. That's even brought up more. You'll see the two things sticking up and it's wrapped around. Obviously it's very camouflaged. I'll just increase the brightness for that. That's it. It reminds me of that one here, which also looked like it was wrapped around. It started to come over into that drag mark, and these are the peculiar holes in between. See what I can do with noise reduction, color, and exposure. So that's twice I've seen that sort of pattern or growth. And this is the other picture where that thing behind it leaves a drag mark, and that starts to go into that drag mark there. See what I mean? It comes over into it. The other picture was this thing that just looks like it has to be some sort of a fungus growth or something like that. There's too many twists and turns in it to be a rock. See what I mean? It's very bizarre. Could be a rock, but there's just too much in it. See what I mean? So this whole area here shows things that I haven't found anywhere else. It seems to be concentrated in this area. And here's that other view of it. There's just too many twisting and spiraling bits and pieces coming out of it just to be a rock. But again, the rocks here are very strange. That's better. See what I mean? If I bring that up now, there's just too much happening there. to be accidental rock formations. That's probably all I can prove with this one, but there's just, especially that thing there's just too many things coming out of it. That one there as well, it looks like a huge arachnoid or some sort of growth, cactus growth that seems to come around. And this was very close to that cactus coming out of a rock. It looks like cactus. Here are these three things coming out of that hole. Here's that thing that looks like it's just wrapped up and spiral. There it is. And these two processes come up in the center like some sort of rattlesnake. And that's it for this one.